everyone, my name is Kristen, and I am here to share with you a few options that you may find valuable for organizing your online course. This can apply to not just your online courses, but high flex models or hybrid courses and web enhanced even. So there's a couple of different ways that we go about this, and most of the time you use similar tactics and strategies in a face-to-face class that you would in this online setup. It just requires a little bit more organization than maybe we would otherwise do. So I wanted to share this particular class, which is a course we are going to attempt to be certified through Quality Matters. I've gone through the initial processes with it, and hopefully it'll make sense and give you kind of an idea of what options there are when setting up your online course for organization. On that home page, when you first open the course, there's a couple of key points right here all the way through to course content. These sections right here are probably the most important aspects of the menu item on the left-hand side for your students and for yourself. The home page being this front page right here. In our template, it does say announcements, and I go back and add a home page just because I like the way it looks when a student comes in for the first time, this being what they see. And I also make sure that I always have my announcements still front and center. So if you want to use the home page as an announcements page, or if you want to add the home page separate from your announcements, you can certainly do that. One of the biggest things that we will often forget to include, and things that are really helpful to students and also a factor in the Quality Matters process for developing quality online courses, is a Getting Started or Start Here tab. And so in this particular course, what I've included in the Start Here tab, these are things that I will send an email to my students on the first day or even before the first day and say, hey, get started with the course, check everything out, begin with the Start Here tab, and then once they get here, they'll go in and see the instructions, go through the process, look at all the material in the Start Here section, and then afterwards head over to the first unit that you'll be working on. So in that section, I include a course tour, which you've probably heard about in past trainings, but essentially it's just an orientation of the course where I do something similar to what I'm doing right now and kind of walk them through the course. It also includes a link to the syllabus, course calendar, and objectives map. And as most of you know, the objectives of the course and of each aspect of the course are probably the most important starting places for any design or any lesson plan. What are you wanting to teach? And then how do you get that point across in the way you want it to be presented? And so that objectives map, I got some excellent resources from Jenica Smith, who was able to basically create a template for me that I could include objectives in. So hopefully there'll be more on that later. But I include, again, the syllabus, course calendar, objectives map. I have some textbook resources that I require my students to use, so I put a link to that here. The grade scale, both in the breakdown and in the points and percentages. And then a couple of folders with some basic information that you often find in the syllabus. So just some resource areas. That's things like the TAC and the Disability and Access Library and so on. A ton of stuff there. In addition, there's another folder that is policies and procedures. And that thing has things like those policies that are typically in our syllabus, and a couple of additional things like course-specific material, kind of how to do a substantial post and so on, are all within this section. Then if you go back, the very last folder in here is the privacy and accessibility links. So it's all of the things that are required legally as far as accessibility and data privacy and such that are presented through the tools that we're using in this particular course. So that Start Here tab really gives students kind of a foundation to be able to know, okay, where do I go from here? What is the semester supposed to look like? In addition, I also have the standard syllabus tab, and we all have those in our template, so it's pretty self-explanatory what you put in there, the syllabus. But in addition to that, I've added a couple other things that typically come with that course maintenance stuff. Course calendar again, the link to our core competencies, and I do that particularly for this course because this class is often a foundational class for a lot of the competencies. So I tend to put those in here since they link so smoothly to so many of them. I also include links and tech help for our textbook and the resources that we use with the book. And then finally, some buttons on how to get to certain aspects of help for Blackboard. So how to submit assignment, how to complete a quiz, and so on. Hardware and software requirements, and technical competencies that we are hopefully going to have our students capable of doing when they're taking this class. So I've put that kind of stuff in the syllabus tab. The professor information tab, I have included a series of contact details, a little blurb about myself, and then that blurb is also included in an audio file where I kind of give the exact same information just in audio format for students who either would prefer audio or actually need audio due to a disability of some sort. And then office hours and a link to my team's office and conference team. And so that's kind of the stuff to put in those, basic sections that if you could keep this left-hand side as clean as possible and include only the required pieces, then it makes the process a little bit easier for students to follow. And this tab right here, course content, is probably going to be the primary section that you would include a bunch of information in. So this is where I wanted to start giving a little bit more detail because it is one that you have a couple of different avenues you could take in order to set this up. Now, I do this in a slightly more complicated manner than many other folks do, but primarily that was from a research project that we were attempting to see theoretically how our students would learn best and also reduce anxiety in public speaking. So this is set up with the purpose of trying to aid that reduction in anxiety and help them to learn by experience. That being said, this is just one of the options. There's a couple other ways that you can do it. You could set up an individual folder for each week the class is running, and within that folder have all of the information that you need. You could also set it up in modules or units, which is something that I typically tend to do. And I do that because then I can chunk the information in a way that allows me, no matter what the week span of a course, whether it's a 16-week, 12-week, 8-week, 6-week, it doesn't matter. I can arrange the dates correctly without having, 16 individual weeks in my folders. I can have units that are chunked, and I can do that a little bit more easily across different timelines. So my preference is to do it by unit or module, but some folks may even prefer to go by chapter if you use a textbook or something similar to that. So it just depends on your personal preference and what works best for the content of your course. But if whatever you choose to do, once you're ready, for example, if I'm doing a unit, just make sure, and this is kind of the key for students to follow and understand, make sure that whatever is in the folder, that you have a similar due date for all that content. It just makes it much easier for students to follow along. So in this case, this unit 0 is from January 16th to the 24th. That means that all the content within this folder is due on the 24th. And no earlier, no later. They can certainly do it earlier, but it's not required that they do anything earlier than that. It's all due on the 24th. So it makes it a little bit easier for students to follow along in those situations. The only thing that I would very highly recommend you not do as far as setting up the content area of your course is to separate it by content type. So that's where you'll see a folder or a section for tests, a section for assignments, a section for discussions, and one for readings, and so on. Don't do that because it causes students to jump around too much to where they get confused. And we want to make the technical side of this very smooth and easy so that the content of the course itself can actually be retained. And they're not spending too much time trying to hop around from section to section. So instead of doing it by content type, make sure you're doing it by either chunking it in units or modules or putting it by week or something along those lines. Now, if you choose to go the unit route, which is my personal preference, what I would recommend and what typically tends to work really well is within each unit that you use, whether that's 3 units or 6 units or 10 units, within each unit, I have a sort of task list or what to do or agenda, you can call it whatever works for you. And everything on that task list is provided, everything they need is provided below. So for example, the first thing that they're meant to do for this unit is to watch the course tour, and that is linked here. And so they click on that and they can watch the course tour. Then review the syllabus, also in here. Then review the course calendar and determine how you want to keep yourself on track. Well, that's the next in line. Then the syllabus quiz, and then and so on. So everything is linked right here in a row as to what it is that they're supposed to do. And all they have to do is click on whatever the assignment is, and it takes them to whatever they're required to be doing. And so there you go. It kind of has a nice simple setup that helps your students to follow the path that is easiest to follow and focus in on the content of the course as opposed to the technical side of things. So this is kind of how I organize many of the units that I do. Now, I mentioned earlier that I do things in this particular course a little different because of the anxious nature that it tends to present to a lot of folks. And so this is set up a little differently. You note that Unit 0 is set up like I would normally do a unit. Depending upon the course, most of the time they look like that. However, in public speaking, since the anxiety level can literally deter a student from being successful in the class, in and of itself, they may not even take the class because the anxiety is so high. But it can literally keep them from actually graduating college, just the anxiety on its own. So the goal here in this setup is a combination of experiential learning theory and uncertainty reduction theory, and sort of a combination of those to create a process that not only helps them to be engaged and to learn and to grasp the content as best as they possibly can, but also as a way of reducing anxiety through a process that typically has had success in the past. So the way I set it up is into stages. Stage 1 is the experience stage. So in that stage, for example, I will go and we'll use the persuasive speech as a general example of that. In stage 1 in experience, they need to actually experience something. So in a persuasive unit, that could be doing a short persuasive speech impromptu, or write a 1-minute encouraging or persuasive message about XYZ. Or it could be participate in this discussion that requires some persuading and debate. In my case, I have partially a peer review of the previous speech and then a boiling point. So they're talking about things that they get anxious about or excited about or angry about, and then trying to persuade their classmates. And so that is sort of an experience that they have. And that's that first part. It's for them to jump straight in. The second part is to reflect on what that experience was like. So in that case, they're going to learn a little bit more, gain some more information about what does it take in order to do persuasive speaking effectively, and then look at what they just did and think, okay, well, I felt like I did this well, but maybe I should have addressed my opponent, or maybe I should have used logical appeal instead of just emotional appeal, or whatever it might be. Or, wow, I think I used a logical fallacy there. I need to fix that. So this is sort of a reflection point through gaining of material. So I always introduce new material in this section. And you'll note in here they've got a lot of lecture material, videos, a little bit about the speech itself, and a few quizzes. So that second stage is all about reflecting on the experience they had earlier. Then stage 3 is to conceptualize. And in that, you're often taking all of the stuff that you've gained and trying to put it into a big picture. So in this situation, they will learn a little bit about their audience, and then they'll conference with me and go through a whole worksheet / outline process. And with that, we're kind of putting everything together into one plan of attack for a speech. And then finally, you have your stage 4, which is to actually present the speech itself, or present the paper, or complete the exam, or do the lab, or whatever it is that your big part of the unit would entail. And so in this case, they are just submitting the speech and completing it 100%. And so that's kind of the process that I use in this course for a specific reason. But again, all of the content can be very similarly set up to that Unit 0, where each unit is a folder with a list of requirements, and then everything is right below. So again, these are flexible in that there are a lot of different ways you could do it, just keeping in mind the less you can spend or have students spend on the technical side of things, looking for an assignment or clicking a bunch of buttons or doing this, that, or the other thing that is more of a task related, specific to using Blackboard. The less you can make them do with that, the more successful they're going to be in learning your content. So hopefully this was helpful to you, and it can get you started. As always, if there's any questions or you want to run something by me, or you want to chat about how to organize your particular course, you're always welcome to contact me. Thanks, and good luck on a great semester.